Hello everybody, I'm Dan Murrell here with a look at last night's Academy Awards. It was a night full of suspense because there were so many races where nobody really knew what was going to happen. We're going to break down all the big moments as well as some of my favorite moments of the ceremony. But let's start with the big headlines of the night and the night's big winner, which was one battle after another. It won 6 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay, with Paul Thomas Anderson getting awards in all 3 of those categories. Now, last night, Paul Thomas Anderson entered the Oscars 0 for 11 in his previous nominations and 0 for 3 in the directing and screenwriting categories, but he ended up sweeping picture, director, and best screenplay, adapted or original. And by doing that, he entered a pretty elite club by winning those specific 3 awards for the same movie in the same year. He joined Sean Baker for Anora last year, also Bong Joon-ho for Parasite, the Coen brothers for No Country for Old Men, Francis Ford Coppola for The Godfather Part 2, Peter Jackson for Return of the King, and Billy Wilder for The Apartment, among others. One Battle After Another was also Warner Brothers' first Best Picture winner since Argo back in 2013. Sinners had the next biggest haul with 4 awards, including Best Actor and Best Original Screenplay. Michael B. Jordan became the 6th black man to win Best Actor, and Ryan Coogler joined Jordan Peele as the only other black winner for Best Original Screenplay. Sinners set a record earlier this year for most Oscar nominations for a movie at 16. It also set a record this year for most Oscar losses by a movie at 12. In losing the Best Picture race, Sinners also extends an Academy Award streak. The last Best Picture to win and also be the highest grossing domestic release among the other Best Picture nominees on Oscar night was The Departed back in 2007. Now, Slumdog Millionaire, which won back in 2009, was eventually the highest grossing Best Picture nominee that year, but it made a bunch of its money after it won the Best Picture Oscar. So we're coming up on almost 2 decades since the Best Picture winner was also the highest grossing domestic film in the bunch. Jessie Buckley became the first Irish woman to win Best Actress. Saoirse Ronan was the first Irish nominee ever in that category for Brooklyn. Ronan, Ruth Negga, and Buckley are the only Irish actresses to have been nominated for Best Actress. And if you're talking about lead acting award winners who are also Irish, that club now has 3 people in it: Jessie Buckley, Cillian Murphy, and Daniel Day-Lewis. That's not such a bad club. Sean Penn won his 3rd Academy Award, this one for Best Supporting Actor, although he wasn't there to accept it, and he joins a distinguished group of 6 other 3-time Oscar winners for acting. That includes Walter Brennan, Frances McDormand, Daniel Day-Lewis, Ingrid Bergman, Jack Nicholson, and Meryl Streep. Katharine Hepburn holds the all-time Oscar acting record with 4 Academy Award wins. Amy Madigan at 75 is the 2nd oldest Best Supporting Actress winner ever, behind Peggy Ashcroft for A Passage to India. Her role in Weapons and Michael B. Jordan's role in Sinners also constitute the first acting wins for a horror film since Natalie Portman in Black Swan. If you don't count that as a horror film, then it would be the first since Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster in The Silence of the Lambs. Kathy Bates also won the year prior to that for Misery. Sentimental Values win for Best International Feature was Norway's first win in that category. That country's first nominee was the film 9 Lives back at the 1958 ceremony. There were 4 movies that won multiple Oscars last night. One Battle After Another won 6, Sinners won 4, Frankenstein won 3, K-Pop Demon Hunters won 2, and there were also several movies with multiple nominations that walked away with 0 wins. Marty Supreme had 9 nominations but won nothing last night. Bugonia, The Secret Agent, and Train Dreams all walked away empty-handed off of 4 nominations apiece. And Blue Moon, It Was Just an Accident, and Sirat had 2 nominations each and did not win any Oscars. And when we look at films with multiple nominations and how they did as far as winning percentage, K-Pop Demon Hunters went 2 for 2, that's 100%. Avatar Fire and Ash went 1 for 2 for 50%. One Battle After Another won 6 out of 13 nominations, that's 46.2%. Frankenstein won 3 out of 9, that's 33.3%. Sinners went 4 for 16, that's 25%. F1 also had a 25% winning average. It won 1 out of 4 awards. Hamnet went 1 for 8, that's 12.5%. And Sentimental Value went 1 for 9, that's 11.1%. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the show itself. This is the second year in a row that Conan O'Brien hosted the awards. And as a fan of Conan, I think that he seemed a little bit more at ease this year than he did last year, which I guess is kind of understandable considering this was his second year hosting. I really liked his cold open where he ran through all the different Best Picture nominees while made up as Aunt Gladys from Weapons. It really was a throwback to some of the great Billy Crystal openings from the 90s, which I used to think that everybody remembered, but it turns out I'm now one of the only people that remembers that. The opening monologue was a mixed bag, as they all are, but I thought that even if the joke didn't work, that Conan handled it pretty well, and he got in some pretty sharp jabs, including one at Netflix and their, let's say, mixed track record when it comes to theaters.
Ted Sarandos is here, and this is exciting. It's his first time in a theater!
And I liked the bit where he recruited Leonardo DiCaprio to make a new meme on the spot. Of course, the monologue also ended with Conan in a crown and a cape atop a mountain, having an Oscar flown to him by a falcon while being serenaded by Josh Groban because it's Conan, and that's just what he does. I know that the little tag after the show may have thrown some water on the idea that Conan would be a permanent or even a frequent host of the Academy Awards, but I would be very happy to see him come back just because I think that he's a really, really good host for the show. And speaking of Leonardo DiCaprio, yes, he was part of a funny Conan bit, and I know that we're all exhausted by Oscar controversies, but I am shocked that nobody's making a bigger deal out of the fact that he clearly stole Pedro Pascal's mustache and wore it to the ceremony. That's just mean. What I wasn't as big a fan of last night was the Oscar sound team because there were persistent sound issues, whether it was overmodulated sound, muffled sound, or just no sound.
People in the audience.
Oh, that's weird. I guess I'll open mine up. This is strange.
I mean, come on. Is this really the best you can do, Oscars? Is this the best sound team that you can find? I've been to high school assemblies with better sound. You know what? Actually, I was a drama tech kid in high school. I ran the soundboard at high school assemblies better than what I heard last night. Oscars, hire me to come do the sound next year. All I ask in return is that you give me an Oscar, which is not going to happen. Also, one battle after another didn't just describe last night's Best Picture winner, it also described the persistent struggles between award winners and the orchestra trying to play them off stage. And I've got to give them full credit, a few of them were actually able to win that fight.
Thank you to our partners at Netflix who made all of this possible.
All the prosthetic, makeup, and hair people for all the hard work they did. It's showed on the screen.
Until we got to the songwriting team from Golden, from K-Pop Demon Hunters, which won Best Original Song, those poor winners not only got played off during the show, they also got cut to commercial as they were still trying to speak.
I'd like to thank...
And doesn't that tell you everything you need to know about Hollywood right there? I mean, you write the biggest song of the year, a huge global hit. The Oscars use your performance of that song to heavily market their show. But when it comes time for you to accept your award, it's get off the stage. We got more important stuff to do. And beyond that, listen, Academy, if you set a precedent during the ceremony that people can just shout down the music when you're trying to play them off, you have to stick to that precedent. Otherwise, it's just not fair. I mean, the second live action short winner was able to shout down the orchestra, and all they did was take like an extra minute to tell the millionth opera and ballet joke of the night.
We can change society through art, through creativity, through theatre and ballet, and...
In addition to the monologue, Conan also had a few comedy bits during the show that I liked. One of them was the fake advertisement for Ventura Crossroads Labs, which takes classic Hollywood films and converts them into vertical video. And then he had the fake remake of Casablanca with Sterling K. Brown, where he rewrote the script to fit the modern directive that movies need to restate their plot and dialogue all the time for viewers that are watching at home and not paying attention.
I'm in a love triangle.
During World War II. It's crazy.
I know that Conan said that this was something that some studios were doing right now, but we all know who he was talking about. He was talking about Netflix, and we know that Ted Sarandos was in that room. I hope he was paying attention. He probably wasn't. He was probably on his phone. Also, I have rightfully given the Academy Awards a lot of grief in the past for how they handled the In Memoriam segment, but I have to give credit where credit's due. They did a really good job with it this year. We lost some true legends over the last year, and I like how they extended it. They included people who had worked with Rob Reiner, with Diane Keaton, and with Robert Redford into the In Memoriam segment. We had Billy Crystal, Rachel McAdams, and then Barbra Streisand coming out at the end. And I know that Barbra Streisand was meant to be the emotional high point of that segment, and it was already very emotional. They did full screen tributes. The music was nice. But I was already getting a little teary when Billy Crystal did his tribute to Rob Reiner. And when the curtain came up and we saw all of those cast members from Rob Reiner's movies on stage, that really sent me over the edge. For the record, the ones that I clocked on stage were Christopher Guest and Michael McKean from This Is Spinal Tap, Jerry O'Connell and Will Wheaton from Stand By Me, Fred Savage, Carrie Elwes, Mandy Patinkin, and Carol Kane from The Princess Bride, Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan from When Harry Met Sally, Kiefer Sutherland, Demi Moore, and Kevin Pollak from A Few Good Men, Kathy Bates from Misery, Annette Bening from The American President, and John Cusack and Daphne Zuniga from The Sure Thing. Let's dive a little bit deeper on the winners now and what is often the subject of great praise or great criticism on This Morning After the Oscars, their acceptance speeches. Adrien Brody's acceptance speech was so infamous last year that his comedy bit when presenting Best Actor this year was about going back and finishing the speech from last year, which I'm convinced he's been doing anyway in private. The shortest acceptance speech this year was, of course, from Sean Penn, who did not show up to accept his award. This is the first no-show from an acting winner since Anthony Hopkins famously was not at the Academy Awards to end the show a few years ago. Before that, according to my research, the last living winners to not show up to the Academy Awards were Michael Caine and Paul Newman, both in 1987. Paul Newman, who won for The Color of Money, reportedly didn't show up because he was a little dejected from showing up for so many years and not winning. Michael Caine, who won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, was not at the Oscars because, and I promise you this is not a joke, he was on location filming Jaws the Revenge. That is a true story. There's been no official explanation as to why Sean Penn wasn't at the Oscars, at least not as of the time I'm taping this, very late, or I guess I should say very early on Monday morning, although there was some reporting that he is potentially on his way to visit Ukraine. He's been a very heavy supporter of Ukraine and President Zelensky there. He said he would melt down his Oscars to make bullets for Ukraine to use in the war. He gave President Zelensky one of his statues, so I guess it's not a huge surprise. Although there are two things that I find very funny about this situation. Number one, we are told from people both inside and outside the industry that you must campaign aggressively and, press the flesh in order to win an Oscar. And yet Sean Penn won his third Oscar this year doing no campaigning and skipping almost every awards ceremony. The second thing that I found hilarious is that Kieran Culkin presented the award, and Sean Penn not showing up gave him one last opportunity to break out that Kieran Culkin wit on stage, and he did not disappoint.
Sean Penn couldn't be here this evening, or didn't want to, so I'll be accepting the award on his behalf.
Amy Madigan's speech was nice, although a little bit all over the place, but I get it. She was nervous.
As you can tell, I'm a little flummoxed. You know what I mean?
If you're from the South or the Midwest, then you probably know that anytime something like this, something this awesome happens to you, you have a very hard time believing that it's actually happening to you or that you could actually be worthy of it. We're actually very similar to the British in that way. But I thought that she did a very good job. And in my original review of Weapons, I barely mentioned her because I didn't really want to reveal her character or who she was playing. But watching the movie, I so enjoyed her performance, and at the same time, never in a million years considered that it could actually win an Oscar. But I think it was very deserving of that award. Paul Thomas Anderson had a chance to make 3 speeches, and I actually thought that all 3 of his were very good. His first one was for Best Adapted Screenplay. He dedicated it to his kids and talked about how he made One Battle After Another as kind of an apology for how the world is and a symbol of how they could be the change we see in the world and make a better world than the one that we have right now. The second speech that he gave was very heartfelt. He paid tribute to his longtime assistant director and also a producer on One Battle After Another, Adam Sumner, who died between the production of the film and the release of the film. And then I really liked what he said in his Best Picture speech when he talked about the nominees 50 years ago, the ones from movie year 1975, and how winning or not winning the Best Picture Academy Award isn't the definitive thing about a movie's legacy.
There is no best among them. There is just what their mood might be that day. but we're happy to be part of this.
Ryan Coogler's speech for Best Original Screenplay I thought was also really strong. Like Paul Thomas Anderson, he also dedicated the award to his children.
Dad loves you. Memories are all we have. I hope I'll give you some great ones. And when y'all blessed to live a long life and Dad becomes just a memory, I want y'all to remember this one thing. I love y'all more than anything.
And the thing that I love about Ryan Coogler is I have seen him talk about movies in so many different ways and in so many different venues. And every time I walk away, truly impressed with his enthusiasm and his passion for film. And I don't think this is going to be the last time that he's on the Oscar stage. And Jessie Buckley, I thought, gave a nice acceptance speech. Last year, Kieran Culkin got a big laugh when he accepted his Oscar by reminding his wife that she had promised him another child if he ever won an Academy Award. I guess Jessie Buckley decided that she could top that this year because she told her husband that she wanted enough children to fill Madison Square Garden.
I love you. You're the most incredible dad. You're my best friend, and I want to have 20,000 more babies with you. I do. I do.
We'll get to how I did with all of my Academy Award predictions in just a few minutes, but I want to address the 3 short categories because, as always, I completely fell on my face here. I even had 2 chances to pick the best live-action short film because there was a tie, and I still got it wrong. You know, every year for the past few years, I've spent hours watching all of these shorts, analyzing them, trying to figure out which way the Academy is going to go, and almost every single time I'm wrong. I think I'm just going to start picking them randomly because it can't be worse than what I'm doing currently. Props to Kumail Nanjiani, by the way, who was the presenter when there was a tie in the Best Live Action Short category.
Ironic that the short film Oscar is going to take twice as long.
This was the first tie since 2013, which was in the Best Sound Editing category. Back in 1995, there was another tie in the Live Action Short category. But of course, the most famous Oscar tie was back in 1969 when Barbra Streisand and Katharine Hepburn tied for Best Actress. There was also some other Oscar history made last night. Autumn Gerald Arkapaw became the first woman to win in the Best Cinematography category for Sinners. She was only the 4th woman ever nominated. Rachel Morrison was the first for Mudbound back in 2018. And I thought that Autumn Gerald Arkapaw gave a really, really good speech.
I really want all the women in the room to stand up because I feel like I don't get here without you guys.
We also got our first ever Oscar presentation in the Best Casting category, and in year 1, it was an upset. Sinners was heavily favored to win in that category, but it was one battle after another, and its casting director, Cassandra Koulakundis, who won. She's been working with Paul Thomas Anderson since his first movie, Hard 8, and I love that she took the chance to briefly celebrate the fact that she had won an Academy Award before he did.
This is freaking insane, and I have one before you, which is also crazy. Hi. So yeah, I hope you get one tonight. Yeah.
Avatar: Fire and Ash joined Star Wars and The Lord of the Rings as the only film franchise with 3 Oscars for Best Visual Effects, at least according to my research. And while we're on the subject of Oscar history, Ludwig Göransson is well on the way to making some of his own. His 3rd win in the Best Original Score category tied him for 4th most all time in any of the score categories, but those categories have evolved over the years. Sometimes they were adapted scores, sometimes original scores, sometimes they were 2 awards, sometimes they were combined. If you're talking about wins just for Best Original Score, at age 41, Ludwig Göransson has now won 3 of them. John Williams won his 3rd award for Best Original Score at age 50, which means that right now Göransson's got about a decade on John Williams, and if he can be even half as long-lived as Williams has been, then we could see him moving up the all-time charts pretty quickly. There is a hard drive somewhere in the decayed, rusting ruins of Defy Media with a Screen Junkies Plus episode of the show Monday Night Raw that features myself and Nick Mundy interviewing Ludwig Göransson. He came in and did our silly little show, I think just after Creed came out. So I have actually interviewed a 3-time Oscar winner, and yet I have no way of finding that footage or even proving that it actually happened. I promise it did, though. And I have to say, I mean, unless he's undergone a complete personality change, he's a really nice guy. Let's go to a couple of the surprise winners from last night. I already mentioned One Battle After Another pulling the upset in casting. Maybe the biggest surprise of the night was in the documentary feature category. The Perfect Neighbor was heavily favored, but the award went to Mr. Nobody Against Putin, which, to be honest, wasn't my favorite in the category, but I thought it was a really, really interesting film. It's about a teacher in Russia who sort of undercover recorded a bunch of footage after this new curriculum was introduced to his school after the invasion of Ukraine that was very nationalist, very pro-Russia. It is a chilling film at times because you see how these kids are being indoctrinated in Russia. That footage was snuck out eventually, and the teacher fled Russia. He was at the Academy Awards last night and spoke. So even though it wouldn't have been my pick to win, I think it's a worthy winner, but still an upset winner at the Oscars. And then we have the Best Actor race. I don't think there was really an upset winner, but there definitely was a surprise winner because nobody really knew who was going to win. Some people thought it was going to be between Michael B. Jordan and Timothée Chalamet. Others thought that somebody like Leo could maybe sneak into a close race. It did end up being Michael B. Jordan, but for me, that was the most suspenseful moment of the night. And there has been so much talk about Timothée Chalamet in opera and ballet, and there's going to be so much talk about Michael B. Jordan because since it came out last April, I can't sneeze the word Sinners on this channel without getting 15 comments saying, am I the only one who doesn't understand why Sinners is such a big deal? No, you're not the only one. I promise you. And if you look at the comments section, you'll see that you're not the only one. And listen, when it comes to this race, would my vote have been for Michael B. Jordan? No, it wouldn't have been. I would have actually voted for Ethan Hawke because he was my favorite performance in that category. But I am perfectly happy with him winning the Oscar. I think he put in a performance that was worthy of the award. And on top of that, not because of it, but on top of that, he is also literally a lifelong actor, and you could see the inspiration that he took and the strength that he got from the people in that room.
Thank you, everybody in this room and everybody at home for supporting me over my career. I feel it.
Now, a lot of people are going to say that Timothée Chalamet lost because of that opera and ballet comment, which is not true, actually, because that didn't really blow up until after voting had closed. Or they'll say that he lost because of his constant campaigning, or because of his previous speeches, or because he's dating somebody associated with the Kardashian family. There are so many theories as to why the Academy hates Timothée Chalamet personally, or why he doesn't deserve to win. But allow me to float a theory for Chalamet's loss that actually doesn't involve anything about him personally. In the 98-year history of the Academy Awards, there have been 3 Best Actor winners who have been age 30 or younger. Adrian Brody for The Pianist, Marlon Brando for On the Waterfront, and Richard Dreyfuss for The Goodbye Girl. At the same time, if you look at the Best Actress category, there have been 33 winners that have been age 30 or younger. So if you look at Academy history ranging across the decades, it's very obvious that the lead actor category especially is not forgiving to young men, whereas the lead actress is much more forgiving. So I think it might not be that the Academy hates Timothée Chalamet personally, or that they're put off by his antics or anything like that. He just fits into a trend that says that the Academy tells actors, men specifically, that they have to pay their dues before they get that lead actor Oscar. And we have seen this over and over again. We saw it with Leonardo DiCaprio. We saw it with Al Pacino. We saw it with Paul Newman, which means that we may have decades more ahead of us of Timothée Chalamet Oscar campaigns and the discourse that comes with it before he actually wins the Oscar, which is just great. Yay. All right, let's wrap up our look at the show with some of the other memorable moments, the ones that stood out to me. We had 2 performances from songs that were nominated in the Best Original Song category. The first was I Lied to You from Sinners. The second was Golden from K-Pop Demon Hunters. When it comes to I Lied to You, I really liked the staging of this performance. I thought it replicated the best scene in Sinners, although I do think that the song benefited from the theatrical sound mix and not the terrible sound mix that the Oscars had all all night last night. But Miles Caton did a really good job performing live, and we got a vampire Jack O'Connell cameo, so I really don't have any complaints there. Golden, I thought, was a much better sounding performance. It was a nice boost of energy at the end of the show. The only thing that I think could have elevated that performance is if they could have somehow incorporated Leonardo DiCaprio recreating that weird K-pop discussion he was having at the Golden Globes somehow during the song. That would have taken it from a B+ performance to a solid A. Anne Hathaway presented 2 awards alongside Anna Wintour, who of course was the inspiration for Meryl Streep's character in The Devil Wears Prada. And that was a lot of fun, especially because it seems that Anna Wintour is now completely comfortable leaning into the whole Devil Wears Prada thing.
Anna, would you like to read the nominees?
Thank you, Emily.
We got a fun Bridesmaids reunion where they read notes from the audience, including a couple from a very game Stellan Skarsgård.
You're all aging well. Signed, Stellan Skarsgård.
The best casting presentation was done by 5 actors, 1 from each of the nominated films, and I thought that this was really smart because it kind of underscored to the audience at home who might not understand what this category is, why it's important, and what it entails. The only real hiccup is when the camera cut to Delroy Lindo before Wagner Moura was done speaking, so there was this kind of weird pause.
And for that I say, parabéns.
Which means that this moment is a distant second when we talk about awkward moments on stage involving Delroy Lindo this awards season. Grogu made an appearance in the audience while Sigourney Weaver and Pedro Pascal were presenting, which I'm sure was in no way stealth marketing from Disney for The Mandalorian and Grogu, hitting theaters this summer. And it was nice to see Sigourney Weaver break out one of her classic lines, even if it was directed at Kate Hudson, who is like the last person I think I would ever want to cuss out.
Get away from him, you bitch.
And Robert Pattinson and Zendaya came out to present Best Director together. And can I just say, like, wow. Those two looked like actual movie stars. I don't mean like today's movie stars. I mean 1940s movie stars. It's like they time traveled from the 1940s. In fact, are we sure that they're not time travelers from the 1940s, or maybe vampires? I mean, vampires have been pretty big this year. Was the whole Twilight thing for Robert Pattinson a sort of hiding in plain sight thing for the fact that he's a vampire? I mean, it would make sense because he does make up random facts about his past in interviews all the time. So those were some standout things and moments from the show for me. Let's wrap this out by looking at how accurate I was in my predictions as far as who would win at this year's Academy Awards. And I did actually pretty good. I picked 20 out of 24 categories correctly, including all 4 acting categories, Best Picture and Best Director. I think that might be the first time I've ever done that. I'm not 100% sure. That's the best I've done since 2022 when I got 20 out of 23 right. I think my biggest miss was probably in the Best Documentary Feature category, but that was an upset, so I'm not really kicking myself too much. The shorts categories I always know are random, and casting, I mean, it's the first year that award's been given out. I'm not sweating that too much either. As far as the pick that I was proudest of making and getting correct, I think that it was probably Sinners winning Best Cinematography, and it kind of underlines something that I've thought for a while about the award shows, because after I made that pick, there were a lot of people in the comments section saying, well, that was a silly pick because the precursors all say that it's going to be one battle after another. And I understand that the precursor awards, meaning the awards before the Oscars, the BAFTAs, and all that stuff, are often indicative of what might happen at the Oscars. But I think a lot of people take that as some sort of a number to plug into a mathematical formula that someday will solve the Oscars. And I've just never considered the precursors to be that. I think they can be instructive as to how things might go, but I don't think that they're the end-all be-all. There were a lot of people that said that my pick for Amy Madigan was probably not the correct pick because she was the only nominee from her movie, and they don't usually win at the Academy Awards when you only have one nominee for a movie. But I just felt like that's what was going to happen. I felt like she was who the Academy would want to win, in the same way that I felt that Autumn Gerald Arkapaw would be the way that the Academy went with cinematography. I didn't really base that off of anything except for a gut feeling. And that's what I always say to people when they make their Academy Awards picks. You can look at who won at the other shows, but that doesn't mean that they are locked in winners. And if you've got a vibe or a gut feeling that something's going to happen, follow that gut feeling. Sometimes it takes you down a dead end, but hey, at least it's your choice. and not somebody else's. Speaking of other people's choices, let's see how I compare to other awards experts. I came in 1 pick behind Scott Feinberg over at The Hollywood Reporter. He picked 21 out of 24 categories correctly. Good job. I was tied with Pete Hammond over at Deadline and the pickers over at Gold Derby. They both picked 20 out of 24 categories as well. And I came in 2 picks ahead of Clayton Davis over at Variety. He went 18 for 24, largely because he bet heavily on centers, which honestly was not a terrible strategy. It just didn't quite work out. And that's my recap of this year's Academy Awards. What did you think? Which winners were your favorites? Which winners were you not so happy about? Let me know down in the comments below, and stay tuned right here on the channel. Tomorrow, I'll have my look at the weekend box office on Charts with Dan, and then hopefully on Wednesday, I will finally have my review of One Piece Season 2 up. The fact that it came out during Oscar week means that it got pushed back a bit, and then my first release window is really Wednesday morning. So hopefully you still want to know what I thought about that season. But most of all, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.